This program is brought to you by Pussy Magnets.
Put a midge on your fridge with a pussy magnet.
Welcome, my lovely lumps. Or should I say lovely labs? I'm so thrilled to have you here in the Labia Lounge. We're going to yarn about all things sexuality, womanhood, relationships, intimacy, holistic health, and everything in between. Your legs. Ooh, can't help myself. Anyway, we're going to have vag loads of real chats with real people about real shit. So buckle up, you're about to receive the sex ed that you never had and have a bloody good laugh while you're at it. Before we dive in, I'd like to respectfully acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which I'm recording this, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. It's an absolute privilege to be living and creating dope podcast content in Naarm, and I pay respect to their elders past, present, and emerging. Now, if you're ready, let's flap and do this. Oh my God, is there such thing as too many vagina jokes in the one intro? Whatever, it's my podcast. I'm leaving it in.
Don't panic, you're not broken. Your sex education was a piece of shit. Get your flaps out and pull up a couch. It's the Labia Lounge.
Hey gang, just before we jump into this episode, I wanted to offer you an opportunity to access my new mini course for free before I start charging for it in future. It's for people with vulvas and it's quick to complete. It's all about demystifying the female body and pleasure anatomy and getting some basic fundamentals to understand your body better. It's called Pussy Pleasure Secrets, Your Roadmap to Bedroom Bliss. You can grab it on the freebies page of my website or in the show notes. It's a great little free resource to kind of dip your toe in or act as a bit of a taster for my work. So if you've ever been curious about this sort of thing and you just don't know where to start, or you want a really quick, easy, accessible, non-threatening way to get the ball rolling and start working on this stuff, this is a great place to start. Hello, my lovely lumps. Welcome back to the lounge. Today I've got a guest returning, and I must say, this guest, the last episode we did a couple of years ago, is hands down by so far the most popular episode I've ever done. So it was an episode with Jessa Zimmerman about desire discrepancy and having a different libido or desire level to your partner. That's literally the most popular episode I've ever done in 155 episodes over 3 years by like a couple of thousand listens. So if you haven't heard that one, it's obviously a goodie. There's some social proof behind that, so go check it out. But today I've got Jessa back to talk about something a little bit different. There'll be some overlap, of course, but we're going to discuss how to reinvent sex when there is changes happening either physiologically or energetically or emotionally when it comes to aging, when it comes to there being challenges like sexual dysfunction or illness, and, you know, maybe give some practical tips and approaches about how to reframe and reinvent the way we tackle our intimate lives when these things start to impact, you know, our time in the bedroom. So if this is you, if this is someone close to you, if this is something that you see on the horizon, which it basically is for all of us, at some point we will definitely be confronted with, you know, whether it be an illness or an injury or a sexual dysfunction or just downright, you know, commonplace aging. This is something that will be really useful to have in your back pocket and just start to mull over and think about or send to a friend. So without further ado, I'll introduce Jessa again in case you don't remember from our last episode. She's a certified sex therapist and couples counselor. She specializes in helping couples who have a good relationship but who are avoiding sex because it's become stressful, negative, disappointing, or pressured. Jessa educates, coaches, and supports people as they go through her 4-pillar experiential process that allows them real-world practice in changing their relationship and their sex life, guiding them to become easily intimate. She's the author of Sex Without Stress, the host of the Better Sex podcast, the creator of the Intimacy with Ease method, and is a regularly featured expert in the media, including Refinery29, Business Insider, Mind Body Green, and Marriage.com. So we're very lucky to have such an experienced wealth of knowledge that we can plunge the depths of today. Welcome, Jessa. I'm really excited to chat to you again.
I'm so excited to be back. I should update my bio because I actually got included in a New York Times article now too, which is pretty cool.
No.
Oh, and the Wall Street Journal. So yeah, I got to update that.
Girl, that's massive. Definitely update
Yeah,
that.
kind
Those
of
are
fun.
huge. Big claims to fame there.
Yeah, yeah.
All right,
It's
cool.
lovely to be back, and it's great to see you.
Thank you. So I want to just get straight into it. This is something that everyone will probably have to tackle at some point in some shape or form. And it's sort of a little bit of an extension on the last topic that we covered around having different desire levels and different libidos and having to figure out how to navigate that. So I'm assuming some of the strategies will be quite complementary. How we go about reinventing sex when there's dysfunction or when we're coming up against some of the physiological changes in aging is a common thing that I find clients are feeling a lot of stress and a lot of fear and a lot of pressure, whether that be from a partner or usually from themselves about. So
Right.
I'd love to just like cover off some of the common reasons that people might have to start approaching sex a little bit differently. Some of the ones I see commonly, and I'd love to cross check this with you, erectile challenges,
Mhm.
things like endometriosis and like painful sex conditions like vaginismus, and then age related physical or hormonal changes, maybe vaginal dryness, maybe, difficulties keeping an erection. And then things like injury or illness that obviously can cause libido and desire fluctuations. I did do an episode with Tyra Galliano about sex with cancer and sex after cancer. So that sort of ties in
Mhm.
a little bit. But is there anything I've left out, or do you want to expand on any of those things that are going to really, create some challenges in people's intimate lives?
Well, I think first I just want to reinforce that this is inevitable.
Mm.
I mean, at the very least, we're all getting older, right? So
Yeah,
there will be changes as we age and as we're with the same person longer if you're
yeah,
in a long-term committed relationship. I mean, just the brain chemistry is different. And so the
totally.
longer you're with somebody and the more sort of stable and secure and attached you are, the less erotic it is and the less neurotransmitters are cruising through your brain. And then there's, like you said, there's just so many things that can happen that can affect our libido, our sexual functioning, medications. We left that one out, right?
True.
The kinds of
Hmm.
medications that we might be on that are either causing sexual dysfunction or lower libido or trouble reaching an orgasm. There's relationship issues, not
Yeah.
just being with the same person longer, but the kinds of issues that come up as we age or have children or struggle with money or whatever it is can complicate this too. Uh, I guess one other thing I'll throw in there, which is not something going wrong, is the shift towards what I call reactive sex drive too. And partly that's being with the same person longer, but proactive drive is, we probably talked about this last time. That's when you're in the mood, you're thinking about sex, it's on your mind, I'd like to do this thing. And it's really common as we get older, as we're with the same person, as we have more obligations in life to move more towards reactive desire, which is we're starting at zero and the engine's cold. And this can be really unfamiliar to people. So if they were used to coming in hot, knowing what to do, and all of a sudden, gosh, I just am never in the mood, and we try to jump in and do the same stuff and it doesn't really work. Like that's a real opportunity to sort of recreate things.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's funny. You said that because as you were talking, I'd just been jotting down responsive versus spontaneous arousal. Remember to say something about
Yes,
that, it's
exactly.
just,
It's I talk about it all the time because it's so important. And people tend to think something is going wrong.
yeah.
We think we're supposed to have the spontaneous desire and this, like it should work like hunger. And then they really get kind of freaked out when that's gone. Like I used to be in the mood. I used to want sex. Now I don't. So something's really wrong,
Yeah.
as opposed to no, that's a very natural shift, but you still have to adapt to it.
Yeah. Absolutely. And the stress and panic that people feel when their arousal does shift from that sort of proactive or spontaneous horniness in the beginning in that honeymoon phase, once it starts shifting to more responsive, more reactive desire, they'll often think that there's something going wrong in the relationship or their body, or that,
Right.
they've lost their libido. And I've talked about this at length in quite a few of my episodes. So if people want to learn more, I'd say that we probably covered that thoroughly in our first episode, Jessa.
Probably.
Because it's so relevant, and I teach it,
Yeah.
all the time, because it's very
Right.
validating and normalizing for people when they realize that's an inevitable part of long-term relating. It's not necessarily an indication that anything's gone awry. That is just naturally what your body's going to do once you've been in a relationship for a long time with someone. And you don't need to necessarily change anything about yourself. It's more just accepting that and figuring out, okay,
Yeah.
well, how do I approach sex now that my body isn't just automatically wanting it out of nowhere? And
Yeah.
that's where we're going to, I guess, go with this is like, cool, how do we stop putting pressure on ourselves to get back to how we once were and actually accept where we're at now and figure out how we get the most out of that?
Yeah, I mean, that's so well stated because that's exactly what needs to happen. I certainly have therapy clients that come in and they want it to be the way it used to be. And most people recognize that that's not realistic. I mean, we're not 20 anymore.
Yeah.
We're not going to be any closer to 20 the more years go by. Like it's not realistic to think we can go back. And it really is. Well, I guess I'll say this. There's a role for grieving that.
Yeah.
There's a place, because any change is a loss. And
Yeah.
there can be grief that it's not like it used to be. And that's okay. So I sort of want to normalize it. That might be something you have to kind of process. And it's okay to feel sad about that, disappointed about that. And one of the end stages of grieving is like, okay, embracing the new normal. And then it's like, all right, how do we create the most exciting and the best sex life we can at this point with what we have?
Yeah.
Right. So it is adjusting those expectations.
Definitely.
I did want to say too, not everybody, it's not like we go from 100% proactive desire to 100% reactive. I mean, sometimes people do, but mostly we just have less and less spontaneous desire. Some people keep tons of it,
Yeah.
but it's basically anybody who's not in the mood at the moment might potentially get in the mood. That's what we're talking about,
Yeah.
But yeah, for people that are really feeling no libido, it can be alarming.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. I love everything you just said. And that grieving piece is really real, and it's necessary.
Oh yeah.
A lot of people feel this when they have had a baby and things just, their bodies aren't the same afterwards. And, it's okay to feel a little bit sad about that and a bit confronted by the
Yeah.
challenges that poses, because change is hard. It's always hard to adjust to.
It's always hard. And that's a nice example because having a baby is, typically a pretty joyous experience. And it can kind of freak people out. Why am I so sad? But your whole life is different. You don't have the, not just your sex life, but your time and energy and everything changes.
Yeah.
And any change is a loss, and grieving can be part of that. So,
Yeah. Do you think that it holds people back or keeps people in sort of an uncomfortable stage if they don't accept the shift and continue sort of like living in the past and wanting to go back? And do you know what I mean? Is that
oh yeah.
something that happens a little bit? Is people get caught up in that?
Yeah, they definitely can get caught up in that. And I think, I don't know, what's coming to mind a little bit too is the couples that I see, sometimes one partner is really grieving how it used to be, and the other one's a little more ready to move on. Like they've accepted their body has changed, or maybe not totally, but that can be a hard dynamic between a couple, that somebody is really much more attached to the past and in that grief and having a harder time being ready to be like, okay, now what do we do? Because you're not always in lockstep with your partner on this. But and however long it takes someone to grieve and whatever the dance is with that, eventually it's like, okay, what are we going to do? And how are the two of you going to connect? And what kind of pleasure can you share?
Yeah, absolutely. And that was actually one of my questions is like, what do we do if we have a partner that's quite unwilling to tackle this with us or isn't really as sort of able? Maybe they don't have the capacity, maybe they don't have the emotional literacy or the communication skills, or maybe they're just not as invested at working on this. Like, what do we do when we have an unwilling partner or one that just really doesn't understand the struggle if we're trying to reframe our approach to sex?
Yeah, that's a tricky one. I mean, let's see. I mean, you want to give the partner some time, and I think you could lean into the empathy about the grief and the change and try to understand what they're struggling with, and be willing to spend some time in that world with them to be compassionate and supportive. And I think it's a matter of education in some ways, like just this is how it is and this is what's going on with my body. And I really want to work this out now with how it works. And there's going to be a certain amount of like holding on to yourself and validating yourself and your own willingness to be like, yeah, we need to reinvent this. And I've got to work with the pieces I've got. And I've got to make that okay for me, even if my partner struggles. And I think sometimes we're going to lose relationships over that. Like you said, if somebody's not very invested, you've been dating for a couple months and somebody just doesn't want to deal with it, it might not make it, but then that's not going to be your person either.
Yeah.
But in my practice, I'm working with really committed couples who generally, they get on board with the information that this changes, it's inevitable, it's normal, it doesn't mean something's going wrong. And it's actually a real opportunity. I have had so many clients end up saying, what a gift that we were sort of forced to reinvent our sex life and get out of the rut and the conveyor belt we were on. And if we'd never been challenged, it was fine, it was working. We didn't even think about it. It's like autopilot.
Yeah.
And something about this wrench in the works forces them to address it and to communicate differently and to explore new things and to like start over in a fresh way. And they end up so often seeing that as like a gift, which is, it can kind of be hard to wrap your mind around. What do you mean my cancer diagnosis was a gift, or the affair was a gift, or the erectile dysfunction was a gift? But it really is an opportunity to start fresh from this moment.
Absolutely. It's a circuit breaker. And when this is something I spoke about in the sex and cancer episode, and also an episode I've done on sex after menopause. And in both of those episodes, that was something that came up as a real feature of these times where we are forced to put more effort in, put more thought in, to really listen to our bodies, to not bypass our own needs, because we just can't get away with it anymore. We don't have the kind of, spontaneous arousal and like juicy lubrication of youth to kind of get away with a quickie when we're not really ready. You can't really get away with the things that you once were able to, and get away with not communicating clearly about it. So it does sort of force us to level up and I guess enter a new stage of maturity and intimacy when it comes to relating with a partner, out of sheer necessity. And that is beautiful. Like, I think that's amazing.
Yes.
And such a great silver lining. Obviously, it's still challenging and it can be make or break for relationships for sure. But I'm curious because I work with people probably at a slightly different point. You work with couples that are basically pretty content and happy and work well as couples, but their sex life is an issue that they want to
generally
prove.
Yes.
Yeah. So I will often see women as my clients who are very committed to doing the work on themselves, to figuring it out, to trying to improve their sex lives, their intimacy, their access to pleasure, and to sort it out. And not all the time. Often they're with really gorgeous, willing partners, but a lot of the time, especially in the sort of older generation, the boomers, they're with these men that are completely unwilling or unable to come to the table. And so the women are going and doing all this work and reading all the books and doing the podcasts and buying all the toys, and they're trying so hard half of the time to kind of meet his needs because they're thinking, oh, there's something wrong with me. I'm not wanting to have sex enough.
Right.
Meanwhile, I'm just thinking in the background, oh my fucking God, I wouldn't want to have sex either if I was married to that person,
Right.
And they can only do so much when they're responsible for their side of things and also trying to take responsibility for the partner's side of things. So that's why I asked that question. And I suppose you don't really have to come up against that as often, but something that I do see a lot is like women just going, well, what do I do if like I'm the one that's leading the charge here and I'm doing all the stuff and he's just not meeting me in the middle, and like, my personal response in my head that I don't say as a coach is like, get the fuck out of there and dump him.
Get the fuck out of there. Yeah. I mean, you really have to decide. First of all, I would invite any women to be doing this for themselves. It is not going to be sustainable to do all this work and have sex and all this stuff just to meet your partner's needs. That's not the basis on which we can build a thriving sex life. So do all this work and exploration and buy the toys and have a grand old time by yourself, as grand a time as you want to with your partner. But I really think you're going to have to hold on to yourself and know what you're worth and what you insist on that and don't settle for less. And that's easy to say in theory, but if your whole financial livelihood depends on I get it can be more complicated. You've got children together. It's not so easy to walk away. But there was a guy I used to do a lot of training with who said, I love this. And it's like a koan that you could ponder forever. You only get as good a relationship as you're willing to lose.
Whoa, give me a second.
Yeah, ponder. Right. So basically, if you'll do anything to keep it, you'll throw yourself under the bus, you'll sacrifice, you're not going to have a very good relationship. Like this capacity to say, you know what, I have limits here and I've got deal breakers and I can walk away if you won't meet me.
Yeah.
That's your chance to have a really great relationship because your partner's really called to stand up.
Yeah.
They
Exactly.
know they can't get away with the same old shit. Yeah. But again, I get it's more complicated if you've got children and financial ties and health issue, whatever, and not everybody can walk away. But at least try to hold on to yourself, validate yourself, enjoy your own pleasure, and don't be dragged down into the muck.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Sometimes, it's important to just draw a line in the sand. And even if you need to give yourself a time frame and just go, okay, I'll give them another year. And if at that point we've still got the same issues and I'm not getting my needs met, then I really do need to just make good on my, my promise to myself and actually walk away because I don't want to settle for anything less than this. And it's so hard because like you said, there's always reasons keeping us in a relationship. And even if they're not, financial reasons or sort of other practical ones, we're in love with this person and we are living for the past. We're living for that first couple of years that it was amazing. And we're sort of settling for so much less than what we deserve for years and years and years on end because we're in love with the version of them that we know or think they can
we've
be.
gotten very used to it, right? Yeah. My husband says you can't choose who you love, but you can choose who you live with.
Yes.
And it's like, you get to decide what you're willing to accept. And I'll say, I mean, yes, there are entitled jerks out there who just think they should, you should just have sex with them because they want it, whatever. But for a lot of these people, they're ill-equipped or they don't know or they're threatened or they're insecure. Or they don't necessarily show all this stuff except in their resistance. But if you change your steps in the dance, it can't be the same dance. And if you really hold on to yourself and start to behave differently and insist on things or say, no, I'm not going to have sex like that or whatever, you're going to get pushback at first, certainly. But if you hold on to that and you're confident in what you're doing and you're validating yourself, the partner's going to notice. And often they will shift because they actually are invested and they do want the relationship to work and they realize they can't push you back in the box. I mean, it's not really a conscious thing. They're not trying to be manipulative usually. But they really, if you can change your steps with enough confidence and consistency, you might find your partner more willing to get on board too, because they're realizing this is not the same thing and I might lose you.
Hey, baby babes. Sorry to interrupt. I just had to pop my head into the lounge here and mention another virtual lounge that I'd love you to get around. It's the Labia Lounge Facebook group that I've created for listeners of the poddy to mingle in. There you'll find extra bits and bobs like freebies, behind the scenes, or discounts for offerings from guests who have been interviewed on the podcast. There'll also be, hopefully, inspiring, thought-provoking conversations and support from a community of labial legends like yourself. My vision for this is that it becomes a really supportive, educational and hilarious resource for you to have more access to me and a safe space to ask questions you can't ask anywhere else. So head over to the links in the show notes or look up the Labia Lounge group in Facebook and I'll see you in there. And now, back to the episode.
I mean, you have to start with just even like calling it out that if we think sex is penis and vagina to orgasm, if we've had a really rigid way of defining sex, and this is what it is, we have to name how limiting and harmful that is, especially now that you cannot do that thing anymore, or at least not the same way, right? People quickly realize, oh, that definition doesn't serve me. now that I can't get an erection, or now that I have pain, or whatever. So the permission that it all counts. I mean, sex is about pleasure and connection, and that's it. It's not who does what with what body parts or towards what outcome. So trying to give them that permission and freedom. Sometimes, again, there's some grieving or some resistance, but for a lot of people, it's relief. I had this couple, this was years ago now, 10 years ago, 12, I don't even know, in their 70s. And they came in because they couldn't have sex, which meant penetrative sex. And it was probably a combination of, her dryness and vaginal atrophy, which I hate that word, and ED, whatever. But they'd only thought about penetrative sex. That's all they'd had. That's all they'd known. That's all they thought counted. And one meeting where I just can give them permission to no, all of it is sex. Just don't do that. And they were just mind blown, right? Really? So sometimes maybe it's a generational thing. But anyway, the permission that there's nothing specific that defines sex. And so then I work with people to really explore, what do they actually want? What feels good now? I use a particular touching exercise with almost all of my clients. They're going to emphasize different things depending on what the challenge is for them. But the main invitation is to be in charge of your own experience and your own pleasure, and think about what you actually want to receive, and to direct your partner in that. And they say no if they have to, if they really need to, for sure. But otherwise, they're just trying to follow your instructions. And you do that for each other. And there's no goal. You're not trying to make anything happen. It is not sex. It's so out of the norm that can we just explore and connect with what feels good in our bodies now, and not worry about not worry about what your penis is doing. You still have the nerve endings. If those are working, can still feel really good, but maybe you don't get an erection. Can you get over that? This idea that it's supposed to, get hard. It's no, just connect with pleasure and being a participant in each other's.
I so commonly will have to, and it's such a simple thing, but I'll have to just remind people that sex isn't just penetration. That's not the be all and end all. And when you actually just relinquish the expectations that it look like that, and that is the culmination of a sort of sexual session, it changes the game completely, and it just takes all the pressure off the genitals and the penis. And
right.
I often ask clients, males and females, what do you love the most about sex? And no one ever goes, ejaculation or orgasm. It's connection, pleasure, intimacy, feeling close to my partner, feeling the oxytocin from our skin on skin and the cuddles. I like the pillow talk. I like, the kind of curious exploration. There's so many things you can actually enjoy in intimacy that don't involve penetration at all. And once you expand your sort of sexual horizons to include all of that. Like you said, all of it's sex, and all of it can be so delicious and rewarding and nourishing.
Yes.
Even more so if you're used to having this sort of penetrative sex thing as the main goal and on this pedestal, and ignoring all the rest of it as just a stepping stone to get to that.
Yeah, even the word foreplay, right? It's just to get us over where the real thing.
Yeah. So if you're used to that as your default, it can be so liberating and so exciting to actually realize how much enjoyment you can get when you take that down off the pedestal as the be all and end all, and you just start to enjoy the journey. And it sounds so cliche, but it's such a thing. And
no, it's so true.
Get all of those things: connection, intimacy, eye contact, touch, pleasure, arousal. You can enjoy all of those things without having penetration. So I love everything you just said.
So it makes me think too, because I said before, sort of conveyor belt sex. I mean, so many couples who have been together for a while have a way they have sex. It tends to be very efficient. And they do a little bit, and as soon as he's hard and she's wet, hey, we have sex and we're done. And they're barely, it's you're driving to work and you tune out. I mean, maybe not the whole thing, but it's it doesn't really wake up your brain when there's nothing new or surprising. And so something like my exercise, or we are so totally not doing the normal thing. And I'm invited to in this moment, what do I want? And in the next moment, you have to pay attention so differently. And it's
so true.
That's so much better, than asleep at the wheel, but doing the usual thing.
Yeah, so true. Because, one of the most important things I believe in a really like satisfying sort of intimate encounter is presence. And that's like feeling your partner's presence and also being able to be present yourself, which is actually such a it's a disappearing skill, I think, in in today's day and age. Our attention spans are shortening. We're impatient. We're busy. We're stressed. We're overwhelmed. We're overthinking. And so being fully present and able to just both be gifting the other our presence in that moment means that we're able to access so much more pleasure and connection. And because it's a circuit breaker and we're not just on that conveyor belt sex of like, cool, first we're going to kiss, now I'm going to suck her nipple, then we're going to do some hand stuff, now I'm going to suck his dick, and then we're going to put it in. Like if we're not just like, like you're saying, snoozing at the wheel because we're going,
Right.
we're following this, trajectory that we've been doing for the last 20 years. You notice so much more along the way. If you take a different route,
Right.
or maybe you, instead of driving to work, you ride your bike or you walk, you're going to be taking in so much more detail and
Yes.
information and enjoying and savoring that journey. And it's the same with sex. So I love that you use that analogy.
Yeah. And I will say, I mean, I think if I asked a little bit differently, like, what is it you want from sex? But I definitely have people that will say orgasm is a highlight of the experience. And I definitely want people to be able to have an orgasm if they can. So I think sharing that orgasm with someone, because otherwise we could masturbate. Orgasm's great there too. But like in sex, it's not just about the climax. It's about the experience of sharing that with somebody too. So that, just not to totally discount that.
No, of course. I mean, we all love orgasms. The more the merrier. But I do feel like the less we focus on that as the kind of goal or the only successful outcome, the more likely you are to have a better orgasm anyway.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it doesn't just have to, sometimes you ask people, I haven't asked anybody this in a while, but like, how do you know when sex is over? It's like, why is it just over after you come? I mean, like that, does it need to be? Is that when you want it to be? I mean, that it just so reinforces like that was the whole point. And then if you struggle to get there once, or because now there's been a change or something, it can really reinforce this, oh, we're failing now. We're not hitting the goal. And anything that's adding pressure and failure is going to be a deterrent and a problem.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Well, shall we do the segment Get Pregnant and Die?
Don't have sex, because you will get pregnant and die. Don't have sex in the missionary position. Don't have sex standing up. Just don't do it. Promise?
Yeah, so I grew up in a very sex positive house. So I missed the entire week of sex ed in 8th grade because I had chicken pox, but my parents were very open, and my mom actually worked for an organization that did pregnancy and contraception counseling and abortion counseling, and she was eventually doing all the sex ed in the schools. So I had really good sex ed. But the thing I notice hearing from my children now that's different that I didn't get so much was the emphasis on consent. Obviously we knew, an assault wasn't good, but like to role play or to practice setting boundaries and having some limits. Cause in my own experience, it was a certain amount of like, oh, once we get going, once we start, we got to finish sort of. And it would have been, I think, much more helpful to realize, oh no, there's consent all along the way. And you really get to think about what it is you actually want.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I'm really pleased that there's more legislation coming in Australia around affirmative consent, and therefore more funding and more programs in schools. Whether or not they're going to be effective is another story. I think managing to deliver that sort of content and change a culture around something to teenagers, especially when it's designed by adults, is definitely not always on the money. So especially something like that where kids just don't want to fucking hear about it. But hopefully we can start shifting the needle. Cool. Thank you for that. I'll definitely get a TMI story from you at the end as well. So we can hit the segments. I can't remember what you said in your last episode, but I bet you've got more TMI stories in there. So talk to me a little bit about sex with aging and how that can pose challenges. I've heard from people that I'll get clients who kind of come in and say, my orgasms are different. They've changed. They're no longer as powerful. It's not as intense. It's more difficult to access. Is there a reason for this? Can we reverse this sort of I don't want to say the word decline, but it sounds from what a lot of people have described to me, and not everyone, but I have heard people describe their orgasms feeling more subdued. What do we do about this? Is this something you work with? Say more on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the general aging of our bodies, but especially the hormonal shifts that happen for everybody, but more extremely for women, are going to change things. The tissues change, the functioning changes. Men are going to have more struggle with erections generally as they get older and older. The blood flow is different. The tissues are, I don't want to say wearing out, but they're, the cellular changes are happening and affecting the function. And men have declining testosterone. What I've learned since our last visit was that for women, basically the hormone production stops entirely out of the ovaries. So you still have a little bit in your brain, but you have stopped producing estrogen. And testosterone and progesterone are way, way, way down. And that will affect libido, and it will affect your actual tissues, and it will affect your orgasm. So where, I would highly encourage people now to at least talk to their doctor about hormone replacement. I've done a bunch of episodes about this on my podcast too, and there was one really bad study, the Women's Health Initiative, I think it was called, that scared everybody off of this as if it was cancer causing, and it really isn't. So, there used to be, I can't remember what the doctor said, like 60 or 70%, maybe it's even higher of women were on hormone replacement. And now it's like 7% because of that one study that got kind of amplified in our culture and freaked everybody the fuck out about hormone replacement. So anyway, I would encourage people to get the information, talk to your physician, consider that, because the changes are dramatic. And so, without replacing the hormone, I mean, good health, sleep and diet and exercise, you want to maximize your functioning in any way you can. But other than that, it's going to be about adapting to the changes, right? Again, not needing an erection or doing things besides penetrative sex if there's pain or something like that.
Yeah, I did an episode with Joanna McMeekin, who works specifically with women around hormonal changes and perimenopause and menopause. So she does Chinese medicine, she does hormone stuff, and that was a really informative episode. I really respect and trust her take, because I sort of have a healthy suspicion of the medical system and the pharmaceutical industry, along with, an openness to how they can actually help. But I like Joanna's approach because she's very scientifically based and also very holistic. So she's not just like, cool, let's just chuck a pill at that, let's go full Western medicine on it. She's very much a nice combo of like Eastern and Western and just a shit ton of research, because she just goes so deep on special interesting the shit out of these topics. So if anyone's interested in sort of supplements and hormone replacement therapy and ways that you can use diet and lifestyle and herbs and all sorts of things to kind of influence your tissues, your libido, your pleasure when you are going through or have gone through menopause, that is a really cool episode with Joanna McMeekin. But I'm wanting to like one other thing, because I feel like I've just drilled you on a whole bunch of different, what about this? What about this? What about this?
That's okay.
Which are just, I guess that's why we're here, but they are just common things that I hear clients come to me and talk about. So I figure that must mean that other people are, wanting to know more about this as well. What about people who have chronic pain conditions or chronic illnesses, making it really difficult to even access pleasure or enough relaxation in the body to access pleasure, because there's this constant presence of pain and contraction? Like, where do we begin in that regard?
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, I feel like what I'm going to say is it's in addition to whatever other support you're getting medically and in therapy and stuff like that to deal with chronic. I mean, like chronic pain is not my specialty, right? Yeah. And I haven't experienced it, and I can only imagine from what some people have told me what this is like. I think it's probably, I don't know, this balance of taking care of yourself and trying to see where you've got some resources to bring to your partnership without hurting yourself, without sabotaging yourself, So people talk about like, how many spoons do I have today or something, and trying to realize what opportunities do you have a little bit more energy or access, and can you prioritize some of this to be with your partner? And, but you can't bend over backwards trying to just meet your partner's needs, right? You've got to take care of yourself too. And I think there's a real invitation you really may have to redefine sex here. So like, what do you want to receive? Do you want your hair brushed or your feet rubbed, or you just want to be held? Like, it all counts. Like, just allow yourself whatever pleasure you can have without putting some idea that I was supposed to get aroused or something like that. Like, let yourself receive something, and as much as would be really wonderful for you. And then really consider, what can you participate in with your partner? Where are your boundaries? What are your limits? What can you do? Can you snuggle up with them while they touch themselves? Or what, you really might have to redefine what counts, but you can still share some of these intimate moments.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I love the, the brushing hair or the foot massage or just having a bath together. Like, it doesn't have to be, overtly sexual. I think all of those little things are really gorgeous and caring and intimate and pleasurable. The main issue, I feel like, is this fear that they're not able to perform their duty as a partner, or they're not able to, hold up their end of the bargain or deliver pleasure in return. Or, I feel like that's such a vulnerable position to be in when you're sick or you're unable for whatever reason to kind of give in return in the way that you would like, or the way that you feel your partner would like. How scary and how vulnerable to be in that spot. Do you feel like that's a fear that people come in with, thinking like, oh God, their needs aren't being met and I'm not able to do that, and kind of beating ourselves up for that?
I mean, yes, it's a, you got dealt a shitty hand, right? It's not like this is your fault, or you caused it, or you're just wimping out, or you're not, like, you've got something real. And it's hard when somebody's got like an autoimmune thing that's like invisible, or chronic pain, right? So it's like this invisible illness, but it's real. And yes, you're the one that has it, but it's not your fault. You're dealing, with this really shitty hand. And hopefully a partner is compassionate about that. They, understand that you're ill. Sometimes I turn it around. Like, if I have a woman with menopause and now sex is painful, and so they can't have penetrative sex, and then she's feeling horrible about herself, and he's maybe feeling bad about this. But it's like, okay, what if it were the other way around? Or 10 years from now, when it's your erectile dysfunction that means you can't have penetrative sex? Would you be beating him up about that? Like you're beating yourself up about your changes? It's to level the playing field and realize either person could have something happen in their life that changes their sexual functioning. And it's not, it sucks, but it's nobody's fault, right? And if we start to try it on, like, oh yeah, what if it had been me that this happened to? I'd want compassion for that, right?
Yeah. Oh my God, I do the exact same thing, because the most like common dynamic that I see is like the woman feeling guilty, or like not enough or whatever. And that's just, we've been socialized to feel that way, and to feel like, we need to be pleasuring our partner and things like that. And I just go, hey, like, imagine if every time you had sex, and you wanted to have an orgasm, it was like fiery painful for his penis and he bled afterwards. There's no fucking way you would make him have sex with you. There's just no way on this planet that you would be able to even get turned on knowing he was in so much pain. So why do you expect yourself and your body to just perform and suck it up for his benefit? And also, what a disservice we might be doing to our partner by just going through with something, even though it's so painful or uncomfortable for us, for their benefit. But actually, like, if they were to realize how much pain we're in because of what we're trying to do for them, like, they would be mortified. And that would feel
I mean, I've had so many couples come in where the guy's just like, I didn't realize this. And now I'm like, I can't, it's almost like I can't trust her. Is it okay? Or is it not? I mean, this is the last thing I want, is to be causing pain.
Yeah, exactly. And that kind of like leads me to a topic that I speak a lot about, and I saw a gorgeous quote when I was doing a little perusal of your Instagram in preparation for this, around saying no. Like, I work with a lot of people and have so many friends as well that just really struggle to say no. And I love this quote of yours: the ability to say no is the fountain of trust in a relationship. So
Yeah.
say more on that. Excuse this quick interruption. I'm shamelessly seeking reviews and 5-star ratings for the potty because, as I'm sure you've noticed by now, it's pretty fab. And the more people who get to hear it, the more people I can help with it. Reviews and ratings actually do make a big difference to this little independent podcaster. And it's really easy to just quickly show your support by taking that simple act of either leaving 5 stars for the show on Spotify, or even better, writing a written review and leaving 5 stars over on Apple Podcasts. Or if you're a real overachiever, you can do them both. That would be mad. If you're writing a review, though, just be sure to use G-rated words, because despite the fact that this is a podcast about sexuality, words like sex can be censored and your review won't make it through the gates. Lame. Anyway, I would personally recommend doing that right now while you remember, just to get on top of it and let me know you're with me on this journey. Thanks, gang. Enjoy the rest of the epi.
Well, if you can't say no, you can't truly say yes. First of all, right? You've got to have the ability to say no for your yes to mean anything. And your partner can't trust where you're coming from. And if you want this, if you can't have those boundaries and say no. So I tell my couples this all the time: you should really celebrate no. And I mean that literally. Hallelujah, you're taking care of yourself. That's what frees me up to know I can ask you for anything. And you'll let me know if it's a problem, because I don't want you going through things that are painful or bad for you or going to traumatize you, or I'm going to hear about it later. Like, that's not trust building. So no means someone is taking care of themselves, and that's good for both people and should be celebrated, not taken as rejection. I mean, you might be disappointed because you wanted this thing and you didn't get it, but overall, it's a very positive thing. And it's crucial for trust, because if somebody's been having sex that hurts and they never told their partner or whatever, doing something they don't like, and they're finally speaking up, their partner, like, the ground has moved under their feet. Like, I don't know what to think or what to believe. How am I ever going to know if she really wants to do wants to do this? Are they going along again? Like, it's so trust demolishing.
Yeah, absolutely. How are we going to trust their yes if we've just realized that there's been so many yeses that actually weren't authentic, and that they haven't had their own back? And I think, like, it's such a it's a real, like, honor, and it's a compliment. It's a sign of health in the relationship if someone feels safe to say no, because it's received well and it's normalized that a no is okay and even celebrated. So that's just a skill that because I work mostly with women as well, and they definitely have been more socialized and conditioned to say yes and people please. It's something that I find myself working with people on really commonly. And at first they're kind of like, what has this got to do with sex? But it's everything. It's everything because, like you were saying, if you can't say no, like, what does your yes even mean? And what a disservice you're doing to your partner and the relationship if this is the sort of relationship where it's now normalized to bypass your own needs and to be basically dishonest about where you're at, and you're not trusting your partner enough with your no. Not even giving them a chance to respond to your no. So I think, and that's also just such a great way to, like, weed out the people that you really shouldn't be gifting with your body anyway,
Right. And I will say there can be the other end of the spectrum, and maybe somebody who wasn't good at no swings way over, where it's no, and they're not willing to even engage or consider or wonder or try. I mean, no can be overused in some ways. It can be used as protection and be, a boundary set way out here, or maybe it only has to be here. So it's worth a conversation around, is this
totally,
where do you kind of really need to say no, and where is it like a defense mechanism or a protection?
Yeah, exactly. And, when you're figuring it out, there might be some, like, kind of crunchy teething times where you're figuring it out and you
Trial
overcompensate
and
for a
error.
while.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's okay too, just to kind of really drill in the no. You might overuse it for a little while. And then it
Yeah.
might be about, okay, cool. Now that I know I can 100% feel safe to say no and nothing, there's no backlash. It's all going to be okay and acceptable. Now I can actually make a choice, and properly pause and reflect, am I a yes, am I
Yeah.
a no, or am I a maybe? Because like we were
Right.
talking about with reactive or responsive arousal, you might not feel turned on or horny or like you want, sex or penetration or whatever it is to begin with, but you can also just know that your arousal may kick in at a certain point if things are feeling nice and if there's no
Right.
pressure. So you can kind of have an open mind and just approach it with maybe not right now, but maybe, or I'm open to it. And I know that I can be open to it and potentially that may be turned into a yes, because I also know that it can
I,
turn into a no, and
I
I
can
don't have
stop.
to get
Right.
halfway through and be like, oh fuck, well now I have to follow
Right.
through with it.
Right.
So
Right. You said
yeah.
something before I just want to speak to too, which is,
Mm,
the fear of, I'm not pleasing my partner.
mm,
And I just want to emphasize that in my mind, we're each responsible for our own pleasure. So
yeah.
first of all, we have to communicate enough to our partner that they have the information to be pleasing to us. But it's not our job to get our partner off because they're aroused. But I
Mhm.
do think there's a real opportunity, and one should consider, how can I participate in their pleasure? I could I
Mm,
could do everything to bring them to an orgasm, but I could also cuddle up next to them while they touch themselves. And to me, that is all sex. So it's in what capacity can I participate this time and feel good about? Or how many spoons do I have if it's a chronic illness kind of thing?
yeah.
And that's okay. So it's not like your job to please your partner. It's your job to, as much as you can, be part of the process and share that with
Yeah.
them. And again, that's a
Mm,
redefinition of sex, right? We're just sharing
mm.
this experience. That is sex. It's not who's doing
That's
what.
beautiful. Yeah, that's beautiful. I love that. Yeah, sharing in and participating in and maybe adding to in whatever gentle, kind of manageable way you can.
Whatever we can.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, beautiful. So how often should we be talking about sex with our partner? Like, obviously, we don't want to be fixating on it or problem solving
Right, right.
constantly, but it's also not just a once-off chat that you get to do one time and then that's
Yeah.
it, right? So what's best
Yeah.
practice with this?
Well, I mean, there's not a number. I guess the first thing I'll say is in sex itself or right after is not the time to do a postmortem. What went wrong? What could be better? How did, just live in that for a while. Have the
Yeah.
conversations that are a little harder, not critical, but constructive, something needs to change kind of things, probably away from the bedroom. So that's first of
Mhm.
all. And I mean, I don't know. It's not like you want to be having this conversation every day endlessly. And I have plenty of clients that talk about it so much and it's just so discouraging.
Mm.
But you also don't want to just bring it up every 6 months or a year when it really gets to be crisis mode too. So
Yeah.
I think maybe more than how often, it's what's the spirit of that conversation. I think
Mm.
one of the biggest mistakes I'll hear from people is the conversations are rooted in what's wrong and how their needs are not being met. And while that is true and painful, it's likely to make your partner feel bad and just
Yeah.
feel worse and feel more broken and feel more responsible and feel more discouraged. So I think a conversation that's more rooted in, hey, I want this to be as good as it can be. The goal here is a win-win. I'm not looking to just get my needs met. I'm looking for the two of us to co-create a sex life, an intimate life that we can both really enjoy and feels easy to both of
Mm.
us. And what could that take? I mean, really trying to stay positive and hopeful. And what if
Mm.
it were possible? And what would that take? And how could we do that?
Mm.
And try to
Mhm.
avoid the cycle of I feel so bad. Well, I feel so bad too, and neither one of us knows what to do of it. We're having the exact same
Yeah.
conversation. We both feel just stuck. That's so
Yeah.
discouraging. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love the spirit of the conversation being collaborative, being
Yes.
kind of cool, we're on the same team. We both want the same thing. We both want to connect and to deepen our intimacy. And we both are aware that there's something kind of going awry or missing or that could be improved. And so how do we focus on what is working and embellish and accentuate and expand on that? How do we kind of go, oh, these things aren't amazing, we could improve on that, and look at what does work to inform how we go about improving the stuff that doesn't feel like it's working.
Well, and not only are we collaborating or co-creating the solution, I think it's really helpful to recognize and acknowledge we have co-created the problem, whatever it is. Because a lot of times I think a higher desire person, both people tend to think the lower desire person is the one who's got the problem and whose problem it is, and it's their lack of desire that's the issue. And what gets overlooked or not even understood is how much of a role that higher desire person has had in creating pressure or expectations or making them feel, so many ways. So it's been co-created. And so to take ownership of your own role in this and realize, hey, we got here together. I have a role in that too. And together, I'd like to make something better.
Yeah. Something you were saying about I can't remember the words you used, but, just sort of reminding people probably don't do like a full kind of pros and cons list midway through sex or straight after. Reminds me of this. I just ran a workshop over the weekend at a festival, and which is kind of why I've lost my voice. And someone called it a match review, like the process of kind of going, cool, okay, so how was that for you? These were the things you did well. These were the things that I didn't like, do a bit of a blow by blow unpacking.
Like, here are my notes,
Yeah. And I just thought that was such funny language, like a way of thinking of it. And I guess like in the absence of knowing how to approach it or having a framework around how to communicate about sex in the name of improving our experience, like a lot of people don't know how to approach that. So maybe a match review would be their go-to strategy. So just on one final kind of question, you've sort of already touched on it, but just to be really kind of clear and give people some actionable steps, how do we talk to a partner about sex and about concerns and about the need to reinvent the way we're doing it, whether you're the higher desire or the lower desire partner?
Well, I guess as general advice, I would use a lot of I language and make it, centric to you and your experience and what you're realizing that you're needing or something's going on, and try not to be like, oh, your partner, you aren't doing enough or you're not doing it right, or, people aren't going to generally respond well. But hey, I realize something's changing and it doesn't quite feel the same and I need something different, and I would love to explore that with you. So trying to take a lot of ownership around it, I think. We do have to be able to speak up in sex specifically about, actually, can you move a little to the left or whatever, right? But not the sort of meta discussion about how are we each feeling about this. And I guess, go into those conversations really curious about how it is for your partner and how they're feeling, and kind of imagine what they might be afraid of or what they're thinking, what might be making this hard for them too. And then, this meeting in the middle. But the bottom line is we love each other, and we both we want to make this as good as possible. And if sex could be fun and easy for both of us, wouldn't that be lovely? And how can we work towards that?
Yeah. Yeah, humanity first, understanding, compassion, love. These are values that ideally we want to have at the core of the relationship and how we communicate with one another and navigate these things. And that can be really hard to hang on to when we're triggered as fuck and there's a whole lot of shame and trauma and, insecurity around sex and performance and whatever else. But, if you just kind of put humanity first and really try to look at it from both sides. And that's where the argument for having these conversations outside of the heat of the bedroom really comes into play. It's like we want to be in a calm, kind of regulated space so that we can chat about this stuff without being too reactive or too triggered.
Yeah. And we're sort of back to the idea too of validating yourself and holding on to yourself and knowing that you're advocating for what you need. And so if you get a defensive reaction, that you don't just back down. Oh, never mind. I don't need an orgasm. But it's like, realizes your partner's kind of problem coming up. Something's being triggered in them, and you still get to advocate for what you need. I'm thinking of another story of a couple that this was back when I would occasionally see people alone. So this woman came in and she said she'd been faking orgasms with her partner the whole time. And so we talked about it, and she was going to tell him this. And then they came in together, And he had the most beautiful response to this because he was like, how awful that you felt like you had to pretend that whole time. And I am so looking forward to starting from the beginning and exploring. And I just feel so bad that you felt the pressure to like have to do that. And it was just like, I mean, literally, it's maybe the best response I've ever heard. And so that's one end of the spectrum is somebody that's like, holy cow, you had to do that. That's just awful. And I want to totally explore with you. So you might get that response, but you might get defensiveness. Somebody that's like, wait, you've been lying to me this whole time? I wasn't doing it. I mean, who knows? And it's going to come from threat and insecurity and, all kinds of stuff. So trying to hold on to yourself for that and still advocate for what you need and, invite them into a collaborative process. And again, eventually, if they're not willing to go there with you, you've got to think about whether this is the right relationship.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my God. That anecdote gave me goosebumps, the response from that man. So beautiful. And also, like, I think we said this in the last episode, like, sometimes this shit's too hard to do alone and just go hire a professional and give that a crack before you give up. Like, it's really tricky to navigate this. It's not, not easy for anyone, That's why people like Jessa exist and people like me exist. So, I could never have healed all of my sexual shit if I didn't enlist the help of professionals that were further along that journey to me than me. So, right, do you have a TMI story for us just to cap this episode off?
TMI, we love it. TMI, we love it.
Well, I do have a TMI story. It's sort of like what I wish I'd learned too. But now, I'm 61 at the time of this recording, so I'm well into menopause. And I did that interview on my podcast with Dr. Irwin Goldstein. He's the founder of the entire field of sexual medicine. He founded the International Society for the Study of Women's Sexual Health. Anyway, that's where I learned some things for the first time, like that the hormone production totally stops. And basically your genitals, women's genitals, will start to revert to a 7-year-old's without those hormones.
Yeah.
We finish up. I didn't know that. I mean, I had the sense that my genitals were shrinking, but I thought, is this really happening? I was way too embarrassed to ask my husband to like look and tell, are they really shrinking? It was freaking me the fuck out though. And then when he said that, and that this could be reversed with hormone, I mean, literally, we got off the episode, said goodbye. I called up and I made an appointment. I flew to San Diego and saw him. I also learned, not only is the shrinkage of the labia, but of the clitoris. I knew about some of the pain. That part I knew. The urethra telescopes open without estrogen. That's why there's so many more UTIs. Yeah, I didn't know that either. So you've got, so it's sort of like he had some picture, obviously non-identifying, right? But like it becomes almost looking like a donut, like a really little donut, like a lifesaver. It was the size of like a lifesaver, the whole of the urethra. It's like telescopes open without the estrogen. Yeah, TMI. So, but it all freaked me out. But then it was so reassuring to think, oh, wait, this is the anatomical changes are basically reversible. It's like, oh, okay. But I really thought I was going crazy. And it's like, because I can't see my genitals. I don't pull out a mirror anymore or anything, but it's like, really feels like everything's smaller and shrinking. What is going on? Yeah. And nowhere had I ever heard that from any of my mom, any of the women, 15 years as a certified sex therapist. I had never heard this. So I knew about the pain and the lack of lubrication. That's all I'd ever heard. So anyway, that's my TMI story.
That's wild. I mean, no, I love that. That's like, and I'm sure that will be very validating to a lot of people hearing that for the first time as well. I knew about the hormones stopping the shrinkage as a result, and the clitoral sort of shrinkage and things like this. But I had no idea that your urethra telescoped and got that just seems like a sick joke that your clit's shrinking while your piss hole's
right, your urethra's open up. Yeah, exactly.
Hey, me again. If you'd like to support the potty and you've already given it 5 stars on whatever platform you're listening on, I want to mention that you can buy some really dope merch from the website and get yourself a Labia Lounge tote, tee, togs. Yep, you heard that right. I even have Labia Lounge bathers. Or a cute fanny pack if that'd blow your hair back. So if fashion isn't your passion though, you can donate to my Buy Me a Coffee donation page, which is actually called Buy Me a Soy Chai Latte, because I'll be the first to admit I'm a bit of a Melbourne cafe tosser like that. And yes, that is my coffee order. You can do a once-off donation or an ongoing membership and sponsor me for as little as 3 fat ones a month. And I also offer one-on-one coaching and online courses that'll help you level up your sex life and relationship with yourself and others in a really big way. So every bit helps because it ain't cheap to put out a sweet podcast into the world every week out of my own pocket. So I will be undyingly grateful if you support me and my biz financially in any of these ways. And if you like, I'll even give you a mental BJ with my mind from the lounge itself. Saucy. And I'll pop the links in the show notes. Thank you. Later.
Well, yeah, and when I was in my appointment and I was saying it wasn't really libido changes that were my biggest concern. It wasn't even a little bit of pain or I'm sort of in the discomfort part, but it was what he called, he said I should start giving my patients a genital self-esteem scale. There's some sort of measurement about how you feel about your genitals. It was shocking to him to hear that was my biggest concern. It's like my genitals are shrinking and they're not the ones I knew. And he seemed so shocked. And I wish I had said to him, if you looked down and saw your genitals turning more to like they were when you were a 7-year-old boy, how the fuck would you feel? I mean, it's, it's like,
oh my God.
It's a big deal. So anyway, that's my TMI story.
Oh, wow. Oh my gosh. All right. I love that. I loved this chat. I just, adore everything you say is just so aligned with, my work and my views. And thank you so much for
you are welcome.
Grill you with so many questions because like every single answer was so loaded with amazing, helpful, insightful stuff. You're a fucking bad bitch. I love it. Keep killing it. And thank you so much for being a guest the second time round on the lounge.
You are so welcome. Thanks for having me.
And that's it, darling hearts. Thanks for stopping by the Labia Lounge. Your bum groove in the couch will be right where you left it, just waiting for you to sink back in for some more double L action next time. If you'd be a dear and subscribe, share this episode, or leave a review on iTunes, then you can pat yourself on the snatch because that's a downright act of sex-positive feminist activism, and you'd be supporting my vision to educate, empower, demystify, and destigmatize with this here podcast. I'm also always open to feedback, topic ideas that you'd love to hear covered, questions or guest suggestions, so feel free to get in touch via my website or over on Insta. You can also send me in TMI stories to be shared anonymously on the pod. My handle is FreyaGraf_the Labia Lounge, if my account hasn't been deleted for being too sex positive, which, is always a possibility with censorship. But just in case the chronic censorship finally does obliterate my social channels, I'd highly recommend going and joining my mailing list and snagging yourself some fun freebies for the trouble at www.freyagraf.com/freebies. Anyway, later, labial legends. See you next time.